Hello, and thank you for joining KSA for an online webinar on automated meter reading and advanced metering infrastructure. Let's begin by introducing our panel of experts. The first is Chris Aylor. Chris is a licensed engineer and has been with KSA since 1999. He has managed a multitude of projects including water, wastewater treatment, water distribution, and wastewater collection systems. Chris is located in our Tyler, Texas office. Our second expert is Jeremy Orr. Jeremy has been with KSA since 2007 and is also a licensed engineer. He is an expert in water transmission services and metering systems. I know you will enjoy hearing this valuable information from Jeremy today. Jeremy is also located in our Tyler, Texas office.
I really want to thank you guys for your time today. Hopefully, we will try to make water meters and metering technology interesting for you. But hopefully the information we give you today will be useful in determining what your system's objectives or needs are when considering automated metering technology. Just kind of a breakdown of what we're doing with our presentation today. I'll be discussing a brief history of water meters and traditional metering technology. I'll then turn it over to Jeremy, and Jeremy will go through the evolution of meter reading, the differences between AMR and AMI, and when you should consider an AMR and AMI system. He'll then turn it back over to me, and I'll wrap us up talking about the next generation of meter technology and merging AMR and AMI features, and really the transition and implementation process where we talk about how we actually get these things done. So first, just a quick history of water meters. I won't go through all of these, but you can see from our timeline here that starting several centuries ago, back in 1790, the first water meter was invented by Reinhard Woltmann. Moving through time, you could see that we've had an evolution of meter technology. And one thing to note is, if you look at that point right about in the middle of the screen, it says multi-jet meters introduced to the U.S. in 1960s. Well, that's about where we still are today. A lot of the meters that are used to measure water are multi-jet meters. There are some positive displacement ones that we'll get into here, but now we're moving past into the 21st century to where solid state metering technology is becoming more prevalent. The issue really is, as you can see from this timeline, that the need centuries ago and the need that we have today is still the same. We have to be able to accurately measure, record, and to bill for our precious water commodity, potable water. Traditional meter technology, again, positive. We're going to talk about two specific ones, one being positive displacement. Since there are really two primary types of water meter technology that are positive displacement. One's a nutating disc and one's an oscillating piston. Again, we could spend an hour just talking about these two things. It's not really important in terms of the AMR and AMI system. Each system has its own nuances to it. We can talk at length about how these operate, but just know that you're using a fixed volume within a meter and a means to measure water that passes through it, either by moving the water and displacing an oscillating disc or a piston, or through a jet. But let's talk about some positive displacement common problems that we have with those positive displacement meters. They are sensitive to water quality. And if we look at our group of people that we've got out here, those of you that are out there in West Texas, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Total dissolved solids are an issue out there in West Texas. Iron, manganese, things of that nature are also prevalent in our water systems today. And pretty much what you need to know about positive displacement meters is, because it's a fixed volume inside of that meter, particulates can deposit within the meter and can cause that meter to read inaccurately. So as deposition occurs in the meters, the accuracy of those meters can degrade over time. Velocity meters. This is another very common meter technology that's in use today throughout the state and throughout the country. Essentially, this uses a velocity type measurement to measure the rate of which water is passing through a fixed volume. Again, a lot like positive displacement meters, it is a technology that's been around for quite some time. Each one has its own nuances to it. There are issues that arise with these as well. Common problems that we see with velocity meters is that they're sensitive to drag, torque on the sensor element. Many of the water systems that I could see that I'm familiar with that are actually on the webinar today, we have iron issues out here in East Texas, and a lot of times what we do in order to handle those iron issues is we add a sequestering agent, which essentially tries to bind up those iron particles. Well, what happens when you add that agent is on those velocity meter internals, a lot of times what will happen is those will actually deposit themselves and actually scale onto the mechanical moving components inside of the meter itself. And so what happens is as that deposition occurs, the meter starts to get out of balance. The turbine or the measuring mechanism, the thing that spins inside of the meter, becomes heavier. And when it becomes heavier, as that water passes through it, it can move faster and accordingly cause a higher meter reading, or it can get so deposited that it doesn't move at all, which causes a net slower reading of the actual water that passes through those velocity meters. Just wanted to kind of give you guys, just those are really the two primary types of meters that we see in our systems today. Each of the AMR or AMI systems that we've seen utilize one or both of these. But just to kind of give you guys a brief introduction about what you probably know all too well of what's in your system. The AMR AMI components that we're going to talk about and discuss today really are based upon these two types of meters. And an AMR or AMI system doesn't resolve these issues. These issues are consistent and will continue to be concerns or issues that you will have to deal with even in an AMR or AMI type system. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jeremy, where he's going to give you a little brief discussion about some evolution of meter reading and take you through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Now that we've covered the history of water meters and the traditional type of meters, let's examine the evolution of the meter reading process itself. So the 1950s, water meter reading was an all-manual process. Workers read register dials and recorded readings in a ledger book. Billing clerk then computed water usage using current meter reading and previous month's reading. Billing clerk then developed and issued water bills to the customer. I'm sure many of our listeners today are saying, "Yep, that's still how we do it," and that's very common. And obviously, there's a lot of room for error in this process. So in the 1970s, handhelds were developed to manually enter readings and download data at the billing office. The 1970s also had touch read probes developed. These touch read probes would automatically collect readings from a meter by touching the probe close to the meter's touchpad. The 1980s saw the birth of drive-by and walk-by AMR systems. Radio frequency technology was developed that featured meter registers wired to a radio frequency transmitter. Handhelds or mobile collectors were used to obtain meter readings. These readings were then downloaded from the collector into the billing software for electronic processing of bills. Now, this technology is essentially the basis of most AMR systems today. The 1980s also saw the first fixed network reading systems. These systems utilize telephone lines for communication between the utility office and the water meters. Generally, it was either utilities could phone the meter to get a reading, or there was an interface device that was programmed to allow the utility to schedule the meter rings to call in. So in the 1990s, the first fixed network systems utilizing radio frequency technology were developed. These meter registers were wired to radio frequency transmitters, and these transmitters sent readings to stationary collectors, and collectors sent readings from meters to utility by cell phone or some other communication means. Readings were then uploaded to the utility's billing software for electronic processing of bills. Two-way communication also came into existence in the 2000s. So in addition to the meter sending its reading to the utility, fixed network collectors and meter transmitters were upgraded so the utility could send signal all the way back to the meter. So this is a valuable tool we'll discuss a little further into the presentation. So now that we looked at the progression of the technology that's led to AMR and AMI systems, let's take a step back and kind of clarify the difference between these two technologies and identify the components that make up each of these systems today. So automated meter reading, or AMR, this is the automatic collection of water consumption data as well as diagnostic and status data from water meters. The AMR process also includes the transfer of collected data to a central database for billing, troubleshooting, and analysis. AMR systems can be walk-by or drive-by, but regardless of how the meter reading is collected, the communication is generally one way. The meter talks to the metering device, but the device can't send a command back to the meter. There are a few manufacturers that do have two-way communication, but for the most part, it's generally one way. So today's typical AMR system generally includes the following components: a water meter that's equipped with a battery-powered radio frequency transmitter that transmits the meter readings and alerts. The signal from the transmitter at the meter is received by a mobile collector that's installed on the utility's meter reading vehicle. The meter reading data is captured in route software installed on the laptop in the meter reading vehicle. And once all the meter routes have been driven, all this data that was collected is then downloaded to a thumb drive, and then this thumb drive, the data is uploaded into the software that's installed on the utility's computer, and it's uploaded for billing software for bill generation. So advanced metering infrastructure, or AMI, this is a metering system that records water consumption data and also provides frequent transmission of data through a fixed-based communication network to a central point for analysis and real-time control. So transmission intervals really varies depending on the manufacturer, but they're often adjustable. Typically, you're getting hourly data that's provided once a day. So AMI systems can also allow the utility to collect a reading at any time with the click of a mouse. So the architecture of AMI system, this can also vary greatly depending on the manufacturer, but generally they include these same components. A water meter, of course, that's equipped with a two-way battery powered radio transceiver that allows the meter to send and receive data. So AMI systems also include repeaters and data collectors to send and receive the data from the billing office to the metering endpoints. These repeaters and collectors are installed throughout the water system to provide overlapping coverage of the entire service area. These devices are generally installed on existing infrastructure, such as water towers, cell phone towers, street lights, traffic poles, that kind of thing. Sometimes there is a need to put up additional towers if the infrastructure just isn't there, but most of the time cities or water systems are able to leverage existing assets. And also the required number of repeaters and data collectors, they vary greatly for water systems, but these repeaters and data collectors send meter reading data to the AMI system, secure server. And this communication is typically cellular or Ethernet. We've seen that cellular data backhaul is pretty much the most common method used today. Also, many of today's AMI systems are hosted type installations. What that means is there's a server and it's installed in a remote location outside the water system, and that server is usually operated and managed by a third party. The meter data is accessed by utility through internet portals, and this internet portal can be accessed on any internet connected device. Most manufacturers also offer an option for utility to have their own server installed, but a lot of customers just simply don't have the IT personnel to make this a real feasible option. You also see coming off the little cloud there from the server, there's customer web portals is a optional feature that most AMI systems include. These portals allow water customers to log on and monitor their usage. This can be a powerful tool that can help encourage users to make changes to reduce their water usage, and can help customers identify leaks. So AMI networks, there's 3 different types of AMI networks. The first type that is used by most AMI manufacturers today is the star network. The star network uses a direct line of sight radio frequency communication structure. The star network has hub data collectors that communicate with meter endpoints individually. And these meter endpoints transmit data to the collector, and all data has to pass through a data collector before being sent to the AMI server. Another type is the mesh network. Meter endpoints operate together to distribute data through the network and back to the data collectors. In mesh network, the meter data hops from meter to meter until it reaches the data collector. For mesh networks to work, the network has to have clear pathways between meters, and it has to be programmed to hop around bad connections to reach data collectors and ultimately the AMI server. One new kind of network is the cellular network. This network, meter endpoints transmit information through already existing cell phone networks. Data is sent from the metering endpoint to a satellite and then bounced back by cellular signal to the AMI server. This type of system can reduce the initial cost of the physical network, since repeaters, data collectors, and antennas will not be needed. So some of the advantages of an AMR system, the first and most obvious advantage is an AMR system is the reduction of time and cost associated with meter reading. This job that may have taken a handful of employees a month to complete can now be done by a single employee in a few days. This reduction in time translates to a reduction of labor costs, and it also frees up employees for system maintenance and repairs or other assignments that they previously didn't have time to get around to because they were busy reading meters. Improved accuracy. New meters are likely going to be more accurate than the old meters that you're replacing. An AMI system also eliminates errors that can occur in reading and recording readings. No more billing disputes resulting from transposed numbers in a meter reading or that kind of thing. An AMR system provides additional data for system management. An AMR system will provide monthly meter alerts such as leak detection, tamper alerts. Leak detection can improve water conservation as well as customer service, and meter tamper alerts can also help reduce non-revenue water loss due to theft. AMR systems they require less infrastructure, so they can be installed at a lower initial cost than an AMI system. And that kind of brings us to the final advantage. Many AMR systems today are migratable, so this will allow a utility to upgrade to an AMI system without having to change out all their AMR meters. Today's AMR systems are generally upgraded just by installing the required repeaters and collectors and reprogramming some software. Some customers are interested in installing hybrid type AMR AMI systems. These systems usually utilize the AMI aspect in densely populated areas to kind of get the most bang for your buck, and then read the outskirt areas of town with an AMR system. So AMI system advantages: the AMI systems provide real-time water usage data from the water system. They allow owner to obtain detailed water data hourly or on demand. AMI system nearly eliminates time and cost associated with the metering process. An AMI system will drastically reduce the time and cost associated with meter readings. It'll also reduce vehicle wear and tear and operation and maintenance costs associated with vehicles. Daily meter alerts. These meter alerts help reduce non-revenue water and also pinpoint problems in the system that would have usually gone unnoticed. The common types of alerts that are available today include magnetic tamper alerts. If someone's putting a strong magnet on the side of the meter register trying to lower their bill, you'll get an alert. Backflow, register removal, low battery, unable to read, high flow, large leak, no flow. Those are just kind of some of the common ones that we see for manufacturers today. Improved customer service. The more frequent meter alerts you're getting, the better your customer service is going to be. An AMI system can allow a utility to detect customer leaks essentially at birth. An AMI system today can also be purchased with the optional customer portals that I mentioned earlier, and allow customers to monitor their water consumption. Two-way communication. This allows software updates to be automatically downloaded. Firmware updates can be sent to the meter through the network, and this is a huge advantage in that it essentially guarantees your AMI system will not become obsolete over its lifetime. And this is especially an advantage the way technology is advancing, and also two-way communication makes it possible to obtain those on-demand meter reads. So potential issues with AMR and AMI systems. These are some of the items we like to tell our clients about, and just so everybody's aware that it's not all everything's great with AMR and AMI system. There can be some issues. Missed reads. No AMR or AMI system will provide 100% reads all the time. The utility owner will have to manually read some meters or investigate why some meters are not transmitting, and this will be the case most every month. The battery life. Lithium-ion batteries, they've come a long way, but battery life is still around 20 years for these meters. They generally include a 10-year full replacement warranty and a 10-year prorated warranty. Electronic equipment in a harsh environment. Meter boxes are not the ideal location to install electronic equipment. They're dirty, wet, vulnerable to insects and customer tamper. Electronic potting helps prevent water from damaging them, but they are still susceptible to damage at times, and especially tamper. Expectations for return on investment. The utility needs to be financially prepared to pay for a system. We don't advise relying on expected revenue increases to pay for the system. The simple fact is we can't predict a water system's usage. There's too many variables there. Water usage varies year to year depending on weather, rates. We've also seen where some utilities' existing meters are over registering and water sales have decreased. So the simple fact is that an AMR and AMI system, it'll reduce your labor cost. The impact on the utility's water sales, it varies system to system. Reoccurring annual costs. These costs, they vary by manufacturer, but AMR systems typically have an annual software maintenance fee. AMI systems generally have more annual costs associated with them. These fees can include items like cellular service fees, software maintenance fees, software license fees, technical support fees, those kind of things. And it's important to identify these fees up front, just so no one's surprised once the system's installed and you're having to keep paying these annual fees. So topography and infrastructure. Topography and size and shape of a service area can drastically impact the cost of an AMI system. These items are directly related to the amount of collectors and repeaters that are required to obtain the data. Propagation studies are performed by AMI manufacturers to determine the amount of infrastructure required. And this isn't an issue with AMR systems, since all the meter routes are driven. So the key differences between AMR and AMI, these four areas kind of provide a good summary of the differences. Of course, meter readings, AMR system, you're getting readings once a month. AMI system, you can get readings daily, hourly, or on demand. Alert detection. With an AMR system, the utility will receive alerts during a monthly reading. With an AMI system, you'll receive alerts when they occur. This type of alert detection really impacts the water system management. With an AMR system, you're limited to monthly action because you only receive data once a month. With an AMI system, you can check alerts on a daily basis and manage the water system more effectively. An AMI system also provides, or AMR system also provides reactive customer service. For example, if you notify a customer about a water leak with an AMR system, they'll be subject to a higher bill since that leak has been occurring for a month. Whereas an AMI system provides proactive customer service. You can notify a customer when a leak begins or shortly thereafter, and potentially avoid that high water bill. So when and why should I consider an AMR and AMI system? Revenue loss is typically a primary driver that would lead a water utility to consider upgrading to either an AMR or AMI system. Revenue loss can result from a variety of reasons, including theft, unaccounted usage, leakage. Revenue loss typically increases as water infrastructure ages and meter accuracy declines. So aging infrastructure. Water infrastructure across the U.S. Dates back to the 1940s and earlier for many of our systems. And most of these systems have only been upgraded on an as-needed basis. So as a result, many water systems are running on crumbling infrastructure. It's not uncommon to see a system that includes 30 or 40-year-old meters that are inaccurate and on occasions inoperable. If the majority of residential meters in your system are 20 years or older, it's time to consider implementing an AMR or AMI system depending on your needs. Water conservation, this is going to be a big one. Water conservation in the western portion of the state has become an issue in the past decade. We've seen most Texas Water Development Board funding going to the western portion of the state to fund projects that are generally geared towards water conservation or water reuse. AMI system can enable utility provider to conserve water through more accurate metering and billing. These systems also can provide the basis for a new rate structure for the system aimed at promoting water conservation. Enhanced water management, this typically is the driving factor that can be used to identify which meter reading system would be a better fit for a utility. those utilities that are only interested in reducing time associated with meter readings and would like the added benefit of monthly meter alerts, these are the folks that should consider an AMR system. Those utilities that are interested in these two items also want real-time data about their system to help manage and improve the operation of the system. These are the folks that need to consider an AMI system. An AMI system will provide the data. It's really up to the utility owner what they do with that data that really determines how valuable an AMI system can be. Improved customer service. Many water utilities are seeking to improve customer service today. The water customers of the day they're accustomed to receiving instant information. If their water bill appears too high, they want to be able to pick up the phone and call their provider and see what's going on. An AMI system will provide a utility with the most tools for improving customer service. Last item is workforce composition. For smaller systems, meter readers typically have other tasks they're responsible for, whether it be repairing leaks, flushing lines, operating the system. These employees, they have to wear several hats, so installation of an AMR or an AMI system would free up a lot more of their time to operate and maintain the water system. Our larger systems generally have dedicated meter readers, so installation of AMR or AMI system can allow these employees to be reassigned to other tasks in a system or just other positions. The need to relocate or the need to reallocate existing man hours or other tasks in a system or to add additional man hours with new employees, these are both reasons to consider an AMR or an AMI system. I'm now going to hand it back over to Chris, who will continue and discuss the next generation meter technology.
Well, folks, I appreciate your time today. I know that Jeremy's presentation had a lot of information, and so really what I want to try to do here with the remainder of our time is really try to boil this down to where the water meets the wheel, if you'll pardon the pun. Next generation meter technology, if we think about just the way the world is today, nothing stays the same. What is innovative today becomes obsolete tomorrow. I'm old enough to remember listening to 8-tracks. So now we barely have MP3s. Now everything's gone to streaming. So if you just look at how just the way the music industry has gone, much less the computing industry, we have to think about the capital investment that we're making in these AMR, AMI type systems and what they are doing now and maybe what they can do in the future. As Jeremy mentioned, several of the systems that are available today are migratable. So what makes sense today to be a drive-by AMR type system may, in a couple of years, make sense to reinvest capital into making it an AMI system. But some of the other things down to the most basic component of the meter itself are evolving. 3 of the meters that are coming up in the industry are ultrasonic type meters, magnetic flow meters, and then fluidic oscillators. So just want to kind of touch base over these. Ultrasonic water meters, I think many of you who have larger systems know what these are. Transit time is another word to use for these things. They use sound waves and measure the velocity of the water moving past the meter to measure its flow rate. They've typically been on larger installations, and many times you see them as a strap-on type meter, but now they're moving into a smaller component down to the 5/8, 3/4 inch sizes that most residential meters are in the state. Other ones, electromagnetic flow meters. Again, this comes from industrial type technology. They're using magnetic waves, and for those of you nerds on the line like me, you know that Faraday's law is what's used to calculate the velocity through a conductor. All that to say is an electromagnetic water meter requires a significant power draw because it is inducing a magnetic field. Well, what that means is power. Well, how many people do we know that have power readily available right next to their water meter? Well, but how many of us have a brand new Samsung Galaxy that just came out today, which I'm excited for, that has a lithium-ion battery that lasts forever? So with the advent of battery technology becoming more and more powerful, that enables these electromagnetic type meters to become more cost effective and be able to be reduced in size. The last one, and again, this is another technology that just sounds real cool to say, a fluidic oscillator. You say that 2 or 3 times fast, you'll start to believe that you're smart. And again, what fluidic oscillators are, it's a fixed volume. It's measuring a wave that's happening through the meter itself, and essentially counts an oscillation. Just another way to skin a cat. Some of the other things that are emerging features in an AMR and AMI system are remote disconnect meters, distribution system leak detection, and distribution pressure monitoring. Just want to kind of touch on a few of those things. A remote disconnect meter. This is a meter that has the ability to receive a signal to shut the meter off. Many times this is done manually, and it's usually done due to lack of payment. But it's also used for seasonal residents. You have folks that have condominiums or summer homes and that aren't there all the time. So the utility provider has the ability to send a signal to the meter and shut the meter off, essentially shutting water off into the residence or wherever the water's going. It's also good for high move-in and move-out rates, such as rental property. This can be done with both the AMR and AMI type system. It can be such that the AMI system sends the signal and shuts it off, but there are a few AMR drive-by type system meter manufacturers that have the ability to do this via the handheld or the laptop that's in the drive-by vehicle. Why does this make sense? Well, improved employee safety is a big thing. I know of several clients that talk about having to consistently and constantly go back to the same addresses due to lack of payment. Well, some of these folks got smart and decided to chain up their pit bull right next to the meter box. Well, it ain't worth getting bid to shut off a meter. So there are some issues that can arise by having a full-blown manual type shutoff. So automated or remote disconnect definitely is something that's coming, has come, and is continuing to evolve. Distribution system leak detection is another thing that is really more centered towards the AMI type systems, that real-time technology that allows a constant or a very short interval period speaking back to the utility provider. Again, what it's using, it's using that same radio technology, and I'm going to call it sound waves or echolocation, to detect when water's moving differently inside of a pipe. Again, this is coming on. There are a few AMI providers that are looking at how to better evolve this system, but it is something that to keep in mind. And the last thing that is coming out of these systems is pressure detection. This is right now, or pressure system monitoring. Right now, this is a standalone. AMI system providers don't offer this, but they see this as an emerging technology to be able to tap into the remote telemetry unit, the RTU, that's measuring system pressures back into the AMI system. Just something that's coming. and we'll see how that comes as time passes. Well, those are kind of the what the meter types, the differences between AMR and AMI, and the emerging features that are coming out of these systems gets us to this point. Well, I want to do it. What do I do? Well, really the first step in determining how and when and what to do with an AMR and AMI type system, really the first and the most important step is what is the utility provider's goal and objective here? And this can vary. This can be I am a remote system that has 3 employees and I've got a bunch of leaks, so I need to be able to speed up how I'm reading meters. So maybe an AMR system works for them. Maybe they're cash poor because they don't have a lot of connections. Well, an AMR system could be more advantageous to them because of its lower initial capital cost. AMI systems also have their place. Does it make sense with the technology that you have and the end user? Does an AMI system make a lot of sense? Those areas where I think of those of us that live in these technology-centric areas like Austin or Plano, or where Wi-Fi is everywhere and everybody's connected and there's the Internet of Things that happen. Well, a customer portal through an AMI type system makes a lot of sense. It can give the end users what they desire while at the same time equipping the utility providers to remotely acquire meter data without having a lot of boots on the ground. So really we spend a lot of time at the very front end once a utility provider says they're interested in determining really what they want to do, what kind of money they have, what type of objective they have, what type of political climate they're in. That's another real issue that we deal with. So what we do based upon the determination of those goals and objectives is we sit down with the utility owners and we talk about their options. So if we decide that right now it really makes a lot of sense for us to do a drive-by AMR type system, but we see the need that we're going to want to go to AMI in the future, well, that kind of narrows down a few of the AMR, AMI meter manufacturers. There's a few that do this all the time. Some of them require a third-party integration, but we look through what the system options for those. Then what we do, once we kind of get a game plan about how we want to attack or what type of system we want to use, we actually go out there and do a survey sample of existing meters. And what we do is we go out and we take a percentage of a utility provider's connections, and we go out and we actually survey those things. And we look and say, of these surveys the surveyed sample of meters, we looked at them and they're typically X type of meter or Y type of meter, and they're typically 5/8 by 3/4 or something along those lines. Then we also look at the large high water users and look at what type of meters they have and what type of technology they're using. Oftentimes in many of our client cities, the larger water meters are being measured by a mag meter or an ultrasonic. Well, can we integrate those meter readings into an AMR and AMI type system? The other thing that we do when we do that survey is we ask the utility provider to pull some meters and actually do calibration or flow testing on those to see what the actual meter is recording. Is it recording low? Is it recording high? Is it recording about right? And then what we do is we take that information and we interpolate the sample out into the entire system. So we project at that point that of the meters that we sampled, 5% of them were reading high. Well, we project that out to maybe 5% of the entire system is reading high, things of that nature. So we go out and really try to get what the system is actually doing, and just by looking at a small sample and try to interpolate that over to the overreaching or the entire system itself. Then once we get that kind of an idea, we reevaluate. Well, maybe based upon that survey sample, it makes sense for us to go to AMR. AMI just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us. Then we look at the other thing that we would do is we talk to those meter providers or those system providers, and a lot of times a propagation study is needed to figure out how much infrastructure is needed. Well, a lot of times that infrastructure becomes cost prohibitive. Well, that bumps you back into an AMR type system. Really, that moves us into the determination of implementation strategy. So we've got an idea of what we want to do, or we're set on doing an AMR system or an AMI system. How do we want to implement that? And that gets into the execution. Well, the execution, as much as I'd love to tell everybody on the webinar today that it's as simple as pulling out a meter and putting a new meter in, it's not. It never is. Most of the time when we're doing meter changeouts, we have issues. We have meter box issues. Some systems have concrete meter boxes with metal lids. Well, that metal lid can cause interference with the meter itself and its reading ability. So a lot of times it's not just the meter that has to be replaced. So it could be the box, it could be the angle stop, the corp stops. There could be depth issues that relate to how these meters are installed that affect their meter, the availability of meter reading. The best practices for execution: how much infrastructure do you have when we're considering an AMI system? Do we have several elevated storage tanks or water towers in the city? Do we have police and fire or emergency service towers that we could use? And then the last thing is public awareness. As much as we want to think that everybody will get along, we all know that that's not going to happen. There are often times that we have meters that are replaced that haven't read accurately for 30 years. And then you put in your new meter that does read accurately, and the end user's water bill goes up by 100%. Well, that can be an issue. So really, public awareness is something that we try to help our client cities and our client utility providers get up to speed with presenting this information, that once they decide to move to an AMR and AMI type system, to get the word out that this is what's happening, that there could be some cause and effect that happens associated with it. Really the last thing about execution is, usually in all of these situations, when we think about changing out meters, it usually comes back to the poor people at the billing billing department of the city or a utility provider. They've got a lot of work to do that's going to come upon them real quickly. So thinking about how we phase these things and how we allow the old meters to still be used while we're switching them out, while not overloading our billing people. Those are the people that are really responsible for getting the money into us. So we really try to help our clients understand that we've got to phase this in, and we've got to take care of those that are putting the bills out so that it can be successfully implemented. Again, it all varies, and for me to sit here, and Jeremy and I both attest, I can't tell you that one size fits all, that an AMR system is the way to go, that an AMI system is the way to go. It varies. All systems vary in size, in topography, and geography, and it's really a matter of how the system looks and what the objectives and goals of the utility provider is. That really determines what is best for the AMR AMI type system. I know we've gone on. We're about 10 minutes away from being at our hour point. I want to thank you guys for your time today. I know it was a lot of information, but like I said, if you're currently involved in an AMR and AMI type project, maybe some of the information we provided to you today gives you some thought, maybe gets you to ask some questions of your meter provider or of the consultant that you're working with today. We would obviously welcome any comments that you have or any questions that you may have. And so with that, we appreciate very much your time, and if we can be of any help, we'd certainly be more than willing to do that. Hunter, I'll turn it back over to you.
You bet. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Jeremy. You guys really did above and beyond by providing some quality information to those in attendance today, and I appreciate that. We are finished with the formal presentation. I see no questions in the queue. If anyone attending or listening does have a question, feel free to type that in for the next minute or so. It will give you just a quick chance. As the marketing director, I would be remiss if I did not suggest to you that if you'd like to carry on this conversation and talk to us more about this type of system, or even just evaluating this sort of system for your community, we would be glad to talk to you about that. You could reach out either to Chris or Jeremy, either one, or myself in Longview. So we do have a question about the cost difference between AMR, AMI. Could either one of you address that briefly?
I'll try. And without a specific question, it's really, and I don't mean to be trite when I say this. Is you know, it's like comparing the difference between a Toyota and a Ferrari. Well, which one do you want? Do you want to get there fast, or do you want to get there safe and reliably? Not to say that either one is unreliable, but the fact of the matter is an AMI system has more components to it. Because it has more components to it, it will likely be a more expensive alternative. Not only from a component being the physical repeaters or the service that you need in order to communicate meters, but the actual data backhaul and the hosting or the service provided by the meter provider themselves. All of that comes at a cost. So really what we're looking at is you know, just some very common, I'll give you some very real world issues. I've got a client who has about 5,500 meters in their system. They had recently gone through and had replaced about half of those, and they were doing the traditional drive-by touch point type system. And what happened was, because they had replaced half of those meters, they decided that they could replace the other half with an AMR type meter and go back to the meters that they recently replaced and change out the registers and have a complete drive-by system. Well, that made sense for them. For a system of 5,500 meters with the infrastructure that they had in place, I could absolutely have seen an AMI system being appropriate for them, but they decided, based upon what they had in the ground and the investment they had already made, that an AMR system was better for them. So really kind of depends, and I know that doesn't answer the question, but hopefully that gives you some insight.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We do have a couple more questions here. We'll try to get to each of them. How does an AMI system notify a leak, or notify that there is a leak?
Jeremy, I can handle it, or you can. Your call.
Yeah, I'll take it. So a utility's going to every day they'll come into the office and they'll have all their meter reads that they'd received for the past day, and those meter reads will also have meter alerts. So those alerts will show up if you have You'll be able to click on those alerts and see what it is. Of course, this varies manufacturer to manufacturer, but those alerts will come in with the meter readings is essentially the best way to answer it.
Yeah, so what could happen is because it's a daily upload, most of us are using water on a fairly consistent basis. We're all creatures of habit, and we get into a routine. So usually the water usage for a day, if you look at several consecutive days, it's a fairly flat plane when you look at your water usage. There may be a little blip here and there, but if you have a significant water leak that's happening downstream of the water meter, what's going to happen is it's going to show a spike or a consistent set of spikes that happens because of a leak. It could be because, hey, it's time for me to fill my swimming pool up because it's getting hot outside. But what it does is it allows, essentially it's looking at historic data and seeing if there is an outlier to where more water usage has occurred than has occurred over the average past several days or past several months.
Okay. Next question, are there available statistics on meter reliability and or failure rates?
Depends on what meter supplier you're talking to. Not real. I mean, the answer to that is depending upon who you talk to and what we rely on the meter folks to really tell us that. And I understand that they're trying to sell a meter, but there's really not, because meters that are in East Texas water may last a whole lot longer than meters that are put in West Texas water. So it's really a lot of meter reliability issues have to do with the water that's passing through them.
Okay. And the last question in the queue here is, in the AMR AMI system, is there a ratio per 1,000 for misreads?
No, there isn't. Like I said, to say for every 1,000 meters read that 100 of them are going to be wrong, not read, that's possible. But really, that's where the propagation study comes in. When we're putting in AMI systems, we rely on the meter manufacturer and the AMI provider to do a study that says if you place a meter within this area, it has a high probability of reading. But there is not a set ratio or a given ratio. It's so much dependent upon topography and the situation and the environment that the meter's in.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I have one more that just popped in there. Is there any information on the reliability specifically related to the electronic components? Is there any information on the reliability specifically related to the electronic components?
This is a good question. And really what we see when we're looking at the electronic components is the majority of the issues that occur in the meter itself relate to the battery. A lot of times, and that's why you'll see, and I think Jeremy said it in his portion, that most of these meter manufacturers are providing a 10-year bumper-to-bumper warranty, to use an automotive term. And then once 10 years passes, the battery life is prorated. So what's happening a lot of times you'll see is it's really the battery that's the issue. Now, some meter manufacturers separate the antenna from the meter register itself and try to put it inside the box and not necessarily congruent or monolithic, I guess is the word to use, with the meter. And so when there's wires exposed, beware. I mean, we all got fire ants in Texas, and fire ants love electronic equipment. So, the ability to insect issues is really what causes, as we've seen in our experience, the electronic failure issues. It's not really water. While having a submerged meter can be a problem over time, they are potted. But really what we see is those little fire ants will get in there and start boring into that potting, and they'll find a way, and they'll eventually chew up something that'll cause a misread or cause an issue.
Okay, great. Hopefully we answered each of those questions adequately. I don't see any follow-ups to those. So we are at our time, and there are no other questions. We're going to go ahead and end here unless one jumps in right at the last second. Once again, thank you guys for joining us and being a part of this webinar. And if you have any future questions or want to talk to us about either system type, please do not hesitate to reach out and let us know. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we will end right here.